Well, Kathy, there has been relative quiet here today after the onslaught of revelations of the past few days, save, as you mentioned there, for that flurry of angry tweets from Donald Trump. No big surprise there. We now know, as of today, there are 223 House members in favour of pressing ahead with an impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump. It would take a simple majority of them, of the House, 218 in total, to vote to impeach him for that to proceed. The whole process would then move to the Republican-controlled Senate, where many feel it would simply die an immediate death. But for now, at least, the Democrats appear to have the numbers moving in their favour. But what do the people feel? Well, we have come here to the town of Warrington in Virginia. The county here voted very strongly in favour of President Trump in the 2016 election, some 60% in his favour. And it's in towns like this that the Democrats are hoping that the revelations of the past few days about the call and the alleged cover-up will make them think twice about their president. So we've come here to ask them, have the lurid headlines of the past few days moved the dial? Do you think that President Trump should be impeached?
No, I do not. But again, I live out here in a very rural country, you know. We're only 50 miles from Washington, D.C., but people think a lot differently out here than what inner city people do in D.C.
If we actually impeach the president, that could adversely affect the Democrats. So I'd rather not see an impeachment. I'd rather see him voted out of office.
I don't mind President Trump. I think he's doing a great job.
Did all the revelations about his conversations with the Ukraine bother you?
No.
But he should have been impeached. All the stuff that came up about him, yeah.
What, with Russia or?
Everything. When he first got in the White House, everything.
Yeah, he did enforce the Biden deal about them looking into it, but Biden needed to be looked into. He could have done a lot worse.
It's not a scandal. It's not a cover-up. That's why.
What is it then?
Liberal left hysteria.
Exactly.
Well, you can hear it there for yourself. Very little negative reaction from the people we spoke to today towards the president. Some people claimed they hadn't even seen the headlines, and of those that have seen them, they say they simply do not believe them. They dismiss it as more liberal witch hunt. And therein lies the big risk, really, for the Democrats, that in going after President Trump, they risk, in fact, boosting his base, and that all this really will serve to be just a massive distraction in the run-up to the election year next year, 2020, when the Democrats really should be focusing on the issues that matters to the voters rather than what will be a lengthy impeachment process.
Siobhan in Virginia, thanks very much. Well, I'm joined now from Washington by David Frum, the author of Trumpocracy, The Corruption of the American Republic. Thank you so much for coming on the programme, David Frum. Good to see you again. You heard those differing voices there in Siobhan Kennedy's piece. Some think it's a witch hunt, you know, it's the mainstream media lying. Other people think that it's serious. And you recently wrote in The Atlantic that this time it's different for Donald Trump. Why?
Yes. Well, first, it is, of course, true that if you go to areas of heavy Trump support, you will find heavy Trump support. In the same way that if you go to areas of non-heavy Trump support, you will find non-heavy Trump support. But this is a remarkable thing. There is now a plurality, not a majority, but a plurality in favor of an impeachment of the president. Now, impeachment and removal together are very hard to do. You need 2/3 of the Senate to remove 67 senators, and it's hard to see how anybody gets there. But the impeachment process is different this time from, say, the Clinton impeachment that many people remember. That was unpopular at the beginning. On the day that Bill Clinton was impeached, his support jumped to 73%. Donald Trump has never been above 50, and he's down now in the low 40s. He's a much more vulnerable president.
And what's the point of impeachment if you can't actually remove the president at the end of the day because the Republicans are controlling the Senate?
Well, first, sometimes you don't have any choice. I have been someone who's been very cautious about impeachment. I have asked exactly the same question that you did. But we have just had brought to light the president's fingerprints on subordination of the national security of the United States to his own reelection. This aid to Ukraine, this was not something the United States did for charity. The United States Congress authorized almost $500 million of aid to Ukraine because it believes that that war is important to American national security. And the president said, I'm going to delay delivering these weapons that Congress says are essential to national security until Ukraine helps me do dirt on one of my possible political opponents. What do you do with that information when you get it? And one more thing is, even though you may not ultimately remove, the fact of impeachment, the acute accusation, is itself an indelible disgrace. Bill Clinton is never getting the impeachment off his name. Donald Trump, if he is impeached, will never get the impeachment off his name.
One thing I've noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in the Republican response to this, they talk about, the lying mainstream media, but none of the Republicans are really talking about what Joe Biden's son was up to in Kiev. Is there anything there that we have yet to discover?
It's completely beside the point. Look, if the IRS investigates your partner for cheating on his or her taxes, that's one thing. It's a different thing if you slap your partner in the face and say, I did it because I thought she or he was cheating on the taxes. That there are proper law enforcement bodies that are supposed to investigate actual wrongdoing if committed by any American, child of an important person or not. What is never supposed to happen is that the president, who's not in the line of law enforcement, brings pressure on a foreign government to say, I want you to investigate this American. If the president had useful information on law breaking by anybody, he should have delivered it to the proper authorities. The president of Ukraine is not that proper authority.
Briefly on this subject, do you think that, even if his base still supports him, do you think that this will weaken or could weaken President Trump significantly in the re-election campaign?
President Trump already faces a tough year. The American economy has been softening. In the second half of 2019, consumer confidence is down. In 2018, which is one of the best years in the American economy of this century, President Trump was typically in the mid-40s. So he's got some trouble. And this focus on scandal is going to be, this is an easy scandal to understand. It's a very concentrated one. And notice that his Republican allies are actually quite quiet. I don't mean the people on Fox News who will say anything. I mean the U.S. Senate. They are very quiet because this is such a disturbing story.
Right. I wonder if you could just broaden out and kind of span both sides of the Atlantic. There was a picture this week of Donald Trump and Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, sitting together at the United Nations, both looking slightly crestfallen. And then we've got had a lot of debate in this country about the language used in Parliament. I know, having lived in America, that you guys used to watch Prime Minister's questions as a kind of benign blood sport. Do you still see it that way, or do you think the language here has got too toxic?
I have to say, the language has become, it seems from this distant point, the language is more intense because the decisions are so dire. You have a beyond constitutional decision about the whole future of the British economy in your hands. And it's unbelievably high stakes, and it's being made on the narrowest of margins. And understandably, that evokes intense passions. Normally, in the United States, if you want to amend the Constitution, you need a supermajority of the states. In Britain, you're about to amend your economic constitution on the basis of 52%.
Okay, David Frum, thank you very much indeed. Well, this week, a delegation from the US Congress is traveling to Ukraine to meet military leaders in a trip planned many months ago, a trip they conceded could now get tied up in the whole impeachment controversy. But how are Ukrainians themselves reacting to all this? Our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, is in the capital, Kiev. Lindsay, over to you.
Matt, I'm in front of the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. What a nightmare for Ukrainian diplomats this is. Today, President Zelensky was flying back from the UN from New York. They have to navigate their way through this because think about Ukraine. Less than 5 years ago, Russia annexed part of it, Crimea, and it still controls part of the east. Who do they rely on for military support? America. For diplomatic support? America. Democrats, Republicans, Trump, Biden, they can't afford to get on the wrong side of any of them because they really need that American support. Now, what's been happening here? The point person seems to be Rudy Giuliani. Now, Trump's personal lawyer, he has no official position, but he's been here quite a few times, ferreting around, trying to find the dirt on the Bidens, trying to talk to a lot of different Ukrainians in different positions. One of the people he did get to was the former prosecutor general, a man called Yuri Lutsenko. He's no longer Prosecutor General. He lost his job about a month ago. But he today did say that, yes, he did meet Rudy Giuliani quite a few times.
With Mr. Giuliani, I have met twice. There were irregular contacts. But yes, I have spoken with him maybe 10 times.
So, Lindsay, in that now famous call between the Ukrainian president and President Trump, the Ukrainian president kind of promises Trump that he will follow up on the investigation into Joe Biden, presidential rival. Did he actually do that?
According to the information I have, no. Because, as the Americans might say, I think what the Ukrainians have concluded is there's no there there. Even Lutsenko, who initially I think was quite sympathetic and did say that he wanted to follow up on this, now he has said that he didn't follow up on this because there was nothing to be found out. There was an investigation some years back into Burisma Gas. This was the company on which Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, sat on the board. But that investigation was dropped, and there was no implication in it that Hunter Biden was involved in any way in any corrupt practices, even less that Joe Biden had tried to exert any influence. So what the Ukrainians have been implying is that there is nothing to investigate. What they want to do, they just want all this to go away.